for this APM. We have had a good 2-day session. We are going to resume with our third day of this specific webinar. So just give me a minute and I'm going to start sharing my screen also. Okay, so what we did in the yesterday's session was we went through 2 of the exam questions, and those 2 exam questions that we did go through was one of them is termed as film productions company. So we went through this question, film productions company. We discussed this question in detail. We attempted this question in detail. That's what we did with respect to this question. The question was majorly about the critical success factors. So we discussed these critical success factors in detail when we attempted this question. The next question that I actually discussed was the name of this question was this Fairtees company. And what we did with respect to the Fairtees company was we attempted 2 of the parts of the Fairtees company, and we did not attempt the whole question yesterday because of the lack of time. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'll be going through I'll be going through the remaining 2 requirements of this question, the name of which is Fairtees company. I hope you all have this handout with you. Fairtees company. This is what we did in the yesterday's session. We attempted 2 of the requirements of this question, Fairtees, and we are now going to move on to the third requirement of this question, Fairtees. Okay, so the third requirement of this question, in fact, before I proceed, let me have a quick recall of what this Fairtees company's scenario was all about. With respect to this Fairtees company scenario, what I did discuss was I told you people with respect to this Fairtees that it's one of the securities company, and it's one of the securities company which actually provides the security guards to many people who would uh, uh, actually want to have the security personnel on board. So what we did discuss with respect to this company was the first 2 requirements were covered up, and the first 2 requirements pertain to the implementation of the balanced scorecard in this specific organization and the key performance indicators also. So that's what we discussed. Then we moved a bit forward, and what we did was we discussed about the other thing, which was the problems associated with the non-financial performance indicators. We did talk about the problems that are associated with the introduction of the non-financial performance indicators. So we talked about that also. Now what we have is we have got 2 requirements which are left. One of them is using Hopwood's style, assess the existing management style at Fairtees and recommend an appropriate approach. So this is one of the this is one of the theoretical areas. There is one of this theory which is prevalent, which we will have to discuss and we'll have to cover up before we can attempt this question. And there is another requirement which is advise Fairtees on the management setting of targets and how they should be used in the appraisal system. So these are the 2 requirements that we have to cover up. Before I proceed, if there is any question that you people have, if there is anyone having any questions pertaining to this, do let me know so that I can move forward then. Okay, great. So now let's move forward. Let's discuss further. First of all, what's actually going to happen is the question says that you have to, using the Hopwood's styles, assess the existing management style at fairties and recommend an appropriate approach. Let me open up the same answer booklet that I used in the yesterday's session so that it becomes easier for us. Okay, now, so if I talk about this specific question, basically there are three types of management style that the Hopwood recommended. The Hopwood, what he did was he recommended various styles of management. Now, what are those various styles of management? Let me guide you with respect to it. So the three different types of styles of management that he introduced were um, this is actually Hopwood's management styles. Hopwood suggested that the managers who lead the company, who run the company, they usually have got the three types of styles. And what are those three types of management styles? One of them is termed as a budget constrained style. One of them is termed as a budget constrained style. The other one of them is termed as a profit conscious style. And the third one of them, and the third one of them, uh, and the third one of them is actually termed as non-accounting style. So these are the three different types of management styles that are prevalent. What is that? One of them is a budget constraint, the other one of them is a profit conscious, and the third one of them is non-accounting styles. Now let's talk. If I talk about these different types of styles, so what exactly are they? When we talk about the budget constrained style, the budget constrained styles are actually those styles where the managers, what they do is that they focus upon the original budget which is being set. What they do is that they focus upon the original budget that is being set. Now, when they focus upon the original budget that is being set, so basically what happens is they are very much like whatever that you have to do, you have to make sure that they stay within the budget. Any expenditure which is beyond the budget, any expenditure which is over and above the budget would not be applicable. So their style is they don't actually consider the current scenario, they don't consider the current situation. They would rather say that what you have to do is that you would have to focus upon the budget that has been set and you have to make sure that you follow that budget. So that's what is considered to be budget constrained management style. The second one of them is a profit conscious approach where the managers, what their focus is to earn profit in the long term. Their focus is to earn profit in the long term. They don't care about the budgets. They don't care about the restrictions imposed by the budget. They don't care about the limitations set by the budget, but rather what they do is that they focus upon the profit that the organization is going to generate in the long term. That's what a profit conscious style is. I mean, they are not willing to compromise the profit. Other than this profit, they are willing to compromise every single aspect. Other than the profit, they're willing to compromise every single aspect, but it's the profit which they are not willing to compromise. And the third one of them is a non-accounting style where what happens is The managers, they are not concerned about the budget. The managers are not concerned about the profits, but is their major focus is upon the quality. Their major focus is upon the operational factors. This is what their major focus is. So the major focus would be about the quality. Their major focus would be about this specific operational factors. This is what is their style going to be. Okay. Asad Wadaich is mentioning that the profit conscious style would focus upon the profit. Yes, the profit on the long term, even if that is exceeding the budget. Even if the budgetary requirements are not met, still the profit conscious style would prevail. Would say that you could go ahead and do the work. Now, so this is basically the three different types of management styles that you would find in any organization according to Hopwood. So I repeat, according to Hopwood, these are the three different types of management style that you are going to find when you'll go into any specific organization. Now, what exactly is the requirement to this question? The requirement to this question is, it says using Hopwood's styles, assess the existing management style at Fairties and recommend an appropriate approach. So you need to use the Hopwood's suggested styles, and you have to focus upon you have to focus and you have to tell that what is the appropriate approach. Okay, there are students who are confused about this non-accounting style. Now when it comes to non-accounting style, that means the manager, they don't care about whether the profit targets would be met or not. They don't care about whether the budget constraint whether the budget set is going to be met or not with respect to the expenditures and etc etc. Their sole focus is upon the customers. Their sole focus is upon the operations of the entity, that the operations of the entity should flourish. Their sole focus is that the customers should remain happy. Their sole focus is that the quality of the goods is up to the mark. That's what their sole focus is. So when you've got non-accounting style, this is what the accounting style that is prevalent. Now, if I talk about this specific question, let us see that what is the prevalent management style. Now, as we know the background of this company, this Fairty Security is a family-owned company, which has been in existence for past so many years. The family owners, this is the only bread and butter that they have. They focus upon earning maximum profits from this business. That's what their focus has been. And we were being told that a new generation has now come into the business, and the focus of the new generation is that they wish to expand the business to different locations, to new locations. That's what the new people who have actually come into the business now they want to do. So we now need to see that what is the existing management style. It says, given these changes, there may be changes to the management style at Fairties. Therefore, the chief executive officer also wants your assessment of the existing management style at Fairties and a justified recommendation for an appropriate adjustment. She has been taught about Hopwood's style using budget information, budget constrained, profit conscious, non-accounting, and so wants a brief definition of these prior to your um, assessment and recommendation. So now, if we focus upon, if we have to look at what exactly is the current style that's being followed, so you could just go to the key performance indicators that the management is using in order to evaluate the performance of this business. So when I go on to the key performance indicators, I could see that they're focusing upon revenue, operating profit, return on capital employed, so and so forth. So majorly what is actually happening is they are simply concerned about the financial aspect. They are not looking at any non-financial aspects at all. So if they would have been looking at non-financial aspects, then we would have called them profit conscious. Why? Because what happens is the profit conscious means that you are not concerned about the budgets. You are more concerned about what opportunities are there and what could lead to long-term profits of the entity. So if you could look at these KPIs, it's a very short-termism approach that the management is adopting. They're just looking at the current year figures, the last year figures, and majorly the profit and loss account or the income statement figures that they are focusing upon. So based on this, since it's only the financial information that they're seeking to collect, it seems to be a budget constrained style. Had it been like 2008, 2007, 2006, 2005, etc., etc., had it been many different years, then what would have actually happened is we would have said that it's a profit conscious approach. But no, they're only concerned about the short term achievement, which is they're just looking at the current year and the previous year's performance. So what is it going to indicate? That means their budget constrained style. Now, the next thing is what suits them. Now, my question to you, what suits them? Give a reasoned recommendation. What suits them? A mix of profit and non-accounting. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. Anu, we know it's profit constraint. You are saying Gwenella Benjamin, you are saying new on accounting style since the new generation is concerned about customers. Maz Ali, non-accounting. Okay. Now let's just try to understand. Think about it. Your father is running a business and your father is running a business with a budget constrained approach. If your father is running a business with a budget constrained approach and you go into the business and you tell your father, look, dad, you don't have to worry about the cost, you don't have to worry about the profit. Customer is the key. Customer is the key. Quality is the key. What is your dad going to do? Your dad would say that, look, this is our main business. Look, this is the business from which we earn. This is the business from which we run our homes. So we can't just go on taking risk and risk on this business. We have to adopt an approach where we can continuously get a constant amount of profits so that we could grow our business, we could manage our expenses, we could meet our obligations. That's what your parents were going to tell you. Now, put this example onto Fairtees Security. The Fairtees Security is a family owned business which has always focused upon generating profit. So if the young generation has come into the business and they're like, we are going to grow and grow the business, that means they are actually going to be adapting the wrong path. They have to make sure that they don't actually reach, they don't they don't actually end up with many conflicts with the senior management. So the ideally approach is going to be the profit conscious approach, where you would have to focus upon the long term profit of the business. That is going to be the most appropriate approach for this specific business. Yes, Yubin John, I get your point. Now, is everyone okay with this? Anyone having any questions pertaining to it, please? Is everyone okay with this, that we will be having this specific style, which is the profit conscious style that suits this company the most? Okay, great, good enough. Now let's move a bit forward. The next requirement of the question is advise Fairtees on the management setting of targets and how they should be used in the appraisal system. Advise Fairtees on the management setting of targets and how they should be used in the appraisal system. Okay, now, so advise fairties on the management setting of targets. Advise fairties on the management setting of targets and how they should be used in the appraisal system. Now let's try to have a understanding of this. So let's go through this part of the question, which is the human resource management targets and appraisal. So what does it say? It says, finally, given the issues facing fairties noted above, the board will need advice on how to align human resource management with the organization's strategy. So what does it say? Finally, given the issues facing fairties noted above, board will advise on how to align human resource management with the organization's strategy. The current appraisal system consists of an annual appraisal meeting between the individual and their line manager, and then a discussion of the targets of that individual, which are all financial based on the projections for the next financial year, followed by an explanation of the bonus payment based on the previously agreed targets. For this part of your report, CEO believes you should consider the management setting of targets in the light of moving to a balanced scorecard. This should be followed by a discussion of how these targets might be used within the appraisal system. At this stage, no changes to reward system, which is basic plus annual pay, are desired. It is now 1st September 2008. So now, first of all, when we talk about the concept of first of all, let's understand the concept of this rewards. Now, you reward your employees in different manner. You reward your employee by paying them salary, by paying them bonuses, by paying them commission, by providing them promotions, etc., etc. These are the various ways of rewarding an employee. Now, the core objective of any organization, which is usually mentioned in the mission of the organization. So every organization, what it should do is that it should try to align the rewards with the mission. Every organization, what it should do is that it should try to align the rewards with the mission. Now, what do we mean by this? Means that your rewards should be such that they encourage your employee to do things that actually matter to your entity's fulfillment of the mission. Your rewards should be such that they encourage your entity, your employees, to focus upon those aspects which actually would lead to fulfillment of the achievement of the mission. That's how your rewards should be. So now, if this company, which is Fairty Security, is going for the introduction of the balanced scorecard, so the introduction of the balanced scorecard would mean that you cannot just rely on the financial aspects. You would have to now rely on financial plus non-financial aspects. You would have to rely upon both financial and the non-financial aspects. Now, what would that mean? That would mean that now you would have to introduce the performance measures for the employees, and those performance measures are going to be covering the non-financial aspect of customer perspective, the learning and growth perspective, the internal business perspective. They should be covering them. Yeah, is that okay to everyone? Now, so basically what happens is, let's try to have an understanding. Customer, the learning and growth, internal business perspective, all of these have to be introduced. Why? Because we know this thing, which is what gets measured gets done. We do know this thing that what gets measured gets done. So actually, if you are trying to implement the balance scorecard, that means what you should do is that you should try to measure the performance of the entity through all of these four aspects. And when you are going to be measuring them, then that means they are going to get done, and the rewards should be linked to the achievement of, should be linked to achievement of these objectives. Let me repeat, the reward should be linked to the achievement of these objectives. So if I could look at the requirement of the question, so what exactly is the requirement of the question? Let's try to have an understanding. The requirement of the question is, now the requirement of the question is, it says, advise fair teeth on the management setting of targets and how they should be used in the appraisal system. So every year what should actually happen is that the appraisal, the employees appraisal should be linked, the employees appraisal should be based upon the achievement of these KPIs which are aligned with the mission, and which actually cover all the four perspectives of the balance scorecard. So because you see, if you are rewarding your employee, if you are rewarding your employee for achieving just the financial aspect, they would never bother to cover up the non-financial aspect. You have to make sure that you keep this thing in mind. If you have to ensure that you want to introduce the balance scorecard, and a successful introduction of the balance scorecard would mean that you would have to introduce these performance measures covering these aspects, and the appraisal system should measure the achievement of these targets, and the rewards should be provided on the basis of achievement of all these financial non-financial objectives. Is that okay to everyone? Yeah, is that okay to everyone? Okay, this is great. So we are done with this specific question also, the name of which was the Fairty Security. I'm going to now move on to the next question, which is basically the Shivin stores. You already have this question with you, Shivin stores. Now, we would go about the way we have discussed earlier. You would read the first paragraph, then you would go through the various requirements of the question, and then we are going to start discussing. Okay, now, so I hope you would have gone through the question now. So let's actually start discussing this question, the name of which is Shivan Stores. Let's start discussing this question, the name of which is Shivan Stores. It says that Shivan Stores is a listed clothing retailer in Beeland. What is it? It's a listed clothing retailer in Beeland. Its overall aim is to become the largest clothing retailer in Beeland and deliver exceptional value to its shareholders. Now, a very important thing when you are reading through the question, you need to keep these things in mind, that what is the entity trying to achieve? What is there in the mission? What is the entity trying to achieve? You need to keep these things in mind. So the first thing is, it's actually going to be like this. What? It's a listed clothing retailer. It aims to become largest. Now, when it aims to become largest, that means it actually intends to grow. When it aims to become largest, that means it aims to grow in Beeland and deliver exceptional value to its shareholders. Now, that means at the same time, they intend to increase the shareholders' wealth also. So you would have to keep this thing in mind when we would be answering the question, that these are the few important aspects of the entity's mission. That the entity, what they wish to do is that they want to grow, at the same time they want to make sure that they keep on creating more and more value for the shareholder. Now, it says it has recently dropped down the clothing retailer rankings from the fourth to the fifth largest. So it has actually gone down a bit from the fourth to the fifth. Shareholders have expressed concern at the lack of dividend growth at a time when spending in Beeline clothing market has been growing. So now it's a bit of a concern that the spending is growing. That means the business has to grow. So if the business has to grow, so why is there lack of dividend growth? Why is there lack of dividend growth? That's an important thing. Now, what next is there? Let's try to understand. So we have gone through the first paragraph and we have seen that there seems to be certain problems with respect to how this company is operating. Now let's move. It says the requirement is write a report to the board of Shivin to evaluate the performance report in appendix 1 as requested. Okay, I'll come on to that. Using the data in appendix 1, using the data in appendix 1, recommend with appropriate calculation and justification 3 new performance measures for Shivin as requested. The third one of them is advise on appropriate performance measures and systems for Shivin when using the value chain approach to simplify the supply chain. The next one of them is discuss the development of big data. So it's actually development of big data. The value chain is being discussed, the big data is being developed, and its potential impact on Shivin's information system. Remember, we did discuss about the information system yesterday also, including the risk and challenges it presents. Now, okay, so before I proceed, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be discussing about this specific first requirement, which is evaluating the performance report. And I'm going to guide you that how do you actually need to answer the question in the exam when the examiner asks you for the multiple things. So the first thing is basically, it says the requirement of the question is evaluate the examiner usually ask multiple types of questions. The examiner can ask evaluate the performance. The examiner could ask evaluate the performance measures. He could ask performance management system. Then the next one of them is basically the performance report. So if I talk from the perspective of the examiner, you could come across these four different types of questions. What are these four different types of questions? They could be the examiner asking you for what? Evaluating the performance, for evaluating the performance measures, for evaluating the performance management system, and then for evaluating the performance report. Now, what exactly is the examiner? Okay, Maz, I'm really sorry for this. If I'm going at a faster pace, let me slow down. I'm sorry about it. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your feedback. If others are also finding my speed to be a bit fast, um, I would really appreciate if you could always share the feedback. Maz, thank you very much for sharing your feedback. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your feedback. Thank you. Okay, so now let's talk about it. The examiner can ask you a question, and the question that he's going to ask you, he would ask you with these four different types of evaluation questions. What are those four different types of evaluation questions? It could be evaluate the performance. It could be evaluate the performance measures. It could be evaluate the performance management system. It could be the performance report. So these are the four different types that the examiner can actually ask, which is evaluate performance measures, evaluate performance management system, and at the same time, evaluate the performance report. Now, so if the examiner is asking such type of a question, so what exactly does he wants us to do? Let's try to see this. What the examiner wants us to do is that if he says evaluate the performance, that means he is telling you that you have to comment on the performance. You have to judge the performance of the business. If an examiner's question is evaluating the performance, how exactly are you going to be answering the question? So you'll be answering the question this way. You would first of all be calculating the performance using the different ratios and measures, and then you would be commenting. Then you would be commenting on it. So what you would be doing is you would be first of all what you would be doing is you would be calculating the performance using different ratios. And once you have calculated the performance using different ratios, then what you would do is that you would actually comment on that performance, that how exactly is the entity performing. Is that okay to everyone? Okay, now let's move a bit forward. Well, if there is a question that What if the question does not say calculate? So doesn't matter if the question doesn't say calculate, but if the question says evaluate the performance, that means that you have to calculate and then you have to comment on it. Okay, there is a question, will this only be the financial computation? No, it could be financial, it could be non-financial. Okay, is that okay now? Uh, okay, let's move a bit forward. Now, the second thing is evaluate the performance measures. What is going to be this situation, this scenario? The examiner, what he would do is that he would have provided you with the certain measures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. etc. What is that going to be? It's going to be like maybe GP margin, maybe the warranty claims, maybe NP margin, maybe ROS, maybe the customer retention ratio. So examiner would have given you multiple measures in any specific given scenario. Let me repeat. The examiner might have actually given you multiple performance measure in any given scenario. So now, if the examiner would have given you multiple performance measure in any specific given scenario, so if the examiner tells you that evaluate the performance measures, that means the examiner is telling you that these are the measures that are available, that are applicable in this organization. And what you need to do is that you need to actually, you need to evaluate, means you need to comment, you need to judge them as a performance measure suitable for this entity. Are they suitable for the entity? So that's what you have to do. Let me repeat, that's what you have to do. Is that okay now? Are you able to understand that how would you evaluate performance measures? Yes, evaluating the KPI simply. And it's actually whether it is correct for the entity, for its environment, for its basically the mission, etc., etc. That's what it is going to be. Okay, the next one of them is evaluate the performance management system. Now, a very important thing with respect to this evaluation of the performance management system is that you have to understand that when we talk about this specific performance management system, So generally speaking, what do we mean by a system in any organization? The system is actually, the system would actually means that how the performance is measured, how the performance is rewarded. That is what is going to be considered as a system. Now let's try to understand this thing. So it's not necessary that an organization would follow balanced scorecard, or the organization would follow the building block model, or the organization would follow the performance pyramid. It's not necessary. Let me repeat, it's not necessary that the organization would be following them. So generally speaking, if you would come across a question on this, the question would usually be worded like this. The question would usually be worded like this. How? Let's just see. The question would usually be worded like this: evaluate the existing performance management system in the light of introduction of balanced scorecard, or let's say building block model, or let's say performance pyramid. So if the question's requirement is evaluate the performance management system, so what is the examiner asking us to actually do? He would usually refer to another model. He would usually refer to another model. I'm repeating. He would usually refer to another model. Now, what is that model going to be? Let's try to have an understanding. So it's actually going to be that what you would do is that you would simply say, this is the existing system. This is the balance scorecard. The balance scorecard tells us that you have to ensure that there are certain perspectives, which is financial, customer, learning and growth, internal business perspective. So let me repeat. What the balance scorecard would do is that it would say, that you would keep this balance scorecard in front of you. You would say, yes, the current system follows the financial. Okay. The current system follows the customer. Yes, but no, it doesn't follow this. It doesn't follow this. So what you would probably do is that you would simply do it like this. You would simply say, you would simply say that this specific organization does not have, this specific organization does not follow the learning and growth and the internal business perspective. The rest is just the fine thing. Rest is fine. Is everyone okay till now? Okay, great. Let's move a bit forward, discuss further. The next one of them is, which is the last different type of the evaluation question, and that is basically performance report, evaluating the performance report. Now let's try to have an understanding that how exactly do we evaluate the performance report. Let's discuss about it. So what exactly do you mean by the performance report? So you see the senior management, the board of directors, the managers, they constantly evaluate an entity's performance. And for that specific performance, they are being provided a report. For that specific performance, they are being provided a report. Now, so how exactly are we going to handle this type of a scenario? So the examiner, what he did was he published an article that was around 4 years or 5 years back. And in that article, he introduced the concept of PALE. Now, what exactly is the concept that he introduced in that? He was like, if you have to evaluate the report, then you have to follow this PALE framework. Now, what exactly do you mean by this PALE framework? So you would have to follow this specific framework, which is like the purpose, the audience, information, and the layout. So if you have to evaluate the report, what you could simply do is that you could use this PALE framework to evaluate the report. What is that PALE framework going to be for evaluating of the report? Let's have a discussion. Now, what is actually going to happen is, the first thing is you have to talk about the purpose. Now, what is this purpose? When I talk about the concept of this purpose, so purpose actually means the purpose for which the organization exists. And the purpose for which the organization exists is embodied in the mission statement. The purpose for which the organization exists is embodied in the mission statement. Now, when we talk about this specific concept, that the mission of the statement of the organization, what it does is it covers your purpose. So when you are going to be evaluating the report, one of the things that you could compare is that is your report in line with the mission of the organization? For example, if I talk about this company, Shivin, it wants to be the largest clothing retailer delivering exceptional value to shareholders. Now, if for example, the performance report does not tell you about the market share of the entity, does not tell you about the revenue growth, that means that this performance report is not giving you information pertaining to the mission of the organization. The mission of the organization is that the organization has to be largest, and at the same time it has to ensure that it grows the exceptional value for the shareholders. Is that okay? Now, so the first thing is it has to be like what is the purpose? The purpose of the organization. So the report should actually be meeting that purpose. The second one of them is the audience. Now, who is the audience of the report? The audience of the report is your BOD in majority of the cases. The audience of the report is your senior management in majority of the cases. So if it has to be your BOD, if it has to be your senior management, then what actually happens is that you have to make sure, let me repeat, if it's a BOD, if it's a senior management, then what you have to do is that you have to make sure that the report provides information, or the report is structured in such a manner that it is relevant for the BOD. We did discuss earlier also that you've got the strategic level of the organization which requires summarized information. We've got the strategic level of the organization which needs to the point information, the main information. If your report is not being prepared by keeping the audience in mind, if you are giving the minutest of the details in that report, that means it's not targeted towards the right audience. You have not kept the audience in mind while preparing the report. So you have to make sure that whatever the audience is, which in majority of the cases is your management, you have to make sure that the report is providing, is capturing the information that the management needs. The third one of them is information. Now, first of all, if you are giving this specific information to the management, then first of all, you need to understand that you could use, you could make sure that your report, what it does is that it provides information in such a manner that it does not lead to information overload. It provides such information that it should not lead to the information overload. Okay, now the next thing is the information that this specific report should provide. The information that this report should actually provide must uh, actually be one of those things which is easy to use and easy to understand. Usually what happens is, what you could do is that you could keep this mnemonic of accurate in your mind in order to evaluate the information to be of a good quality or not. So what exactly do you mean by this? This is accurate. That means it has to be correct. It has to be complete. It has to be cost beneficial. Has to be user targeted or a user oriented. Then what happens to be, it has to be relevant to the team. Then at the same time, it's authoritative. Now, what do you mean by this authoritative? That is, it's coming from the right source. It's something that could be relied upon. Then what happens is, there is actually this thing which is, it has to be timely, which is it should report on a timely basis. And the next one of them is easy to use, easy to understand. That's what the information should be. So ideally the information should be accurate. Now there are many more things that you can add to it, which could be like it should have internal and the external focus. All of that can actually be done also. Is that okay? Okay, now next, the next is basically the next situation that we could actually talk about is that it's actually the last area, which is about the layout. Now, what exactly do you mean by the layout? Let's try to understand this. The layout would actually mean that this layout means the way it's being presented, the way the information is being presented, whether that be in the graphs or whether that be could be in the table format or etc. I mean, there could be multiple things with respect to the layout. The layout could focus upon the layout could focus upon the layout could focus upon how the numbers are mentioned over there. The layout could actually focus upon how the bar charts or the graphs have been drawn into that information. The layout could be how the comparative analysis has been done, etc., etc., etc. So these are the many things, mainly simply the way the information has been presented. Mainly the way the information has been presented for the people, that is what is going to tell you about the layout. Now, so basically, if you come across a question where you have to evaluate a report, let me repeat, if you come across a question where you have to evaluate a report, so ultimately what happens is that you have to make sure that you keep these things in mind, which is the purpose, audience, information, and the layout. You need to keep these things in mind, then you will be able to evaluate the report well. Okay, there is a question which is, what do you mean by authoritative source? Now see, the information, the source from which the information is generated, the source from which the information is gathered, that matters a lot. If the source from which your information has been gathered is not reliable, let me repeat, if the source from which your information has been gathered is not reliable, that means that this information would lose its characteristic of being authoritative. So for this information to be authoritative, for this information to be something to be relied upon, it has to meet the certain things, which is that it should be coming from an appropriate source. Is that okay to everyone? So if the question requirement is evaluate the performance report, this is how you'll answer it. Performance management system, you know. Performance measures, you know. Performance, you know. Yes, the purpose is should be aligned with them. I mean, the purpose of the organization should be covered in this report. I mean, the report should be measuring those things which ultimately tell you whether the mission is going to be achieved or not. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to take a short break for prayers. We'll have a Asr prayer break. It's time now, 5:16 p.m. So what we are gonna do is that we're gonna have this break till 5:25 p.m. And for the next prayer break for the Maghrib, what I'll do is that I will end up the class early, let's say at 6:30, rather than giving another break. So I think that we can end up the class early so that we can go without break and then end up the class early. So let's meet up at 5:25 p.m. Okay, so welcome back. It was a prayer break. I can understand that we have got two prayers in between. So what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to be giving a prayer break for Maghrib immediately, because it's gonna start off in 20 minutes time. So we will not be able to continue with the momentum. So what I would do is that I would rather end up today's class a bit early, and for tomorrow I'll just try to manage my breaks in such a manner that we have got sufficient gaps in between the first and the second break for both the prayers, because the prayer time is short, and unfortunately if I don't give the break, then people will end up losing the prayer. So that's why I have to give the break. So anyways, okay, now come back to that specific question which we were discussing, and we were talking about the question, the name of which is Shivan stores. And the first requirement of the question was that you are supposed to evaluate the performance report in appendix 1. We were required to evaluate the performance report in appendix 1 as it was requested. So let's actually go through the question. Let's try to have a discussion. So let's go through this specific question. Shivan Stores Company. Kindly read through the question, then I'm going to continue with you people. Okay, so it says there has been a recent change of the chief executive officer, and the new chief executive officer has identified that the performance reporting at Shivan is not fit for the needs of the business. So what we are being told is that a recent chief executive has identified that the performance reporting is not fit for the needs of the business. That means they've identified that possibly there is a problem. She has asked you to prepare a report to the board to address the performance measurement and management issues. She has asked you to prepare a board report to the board to address the performance measurement and the management issues, which she sees as most important. Now, let's just go through a bit further. Now, what next is there? Her plan is to achieve the overall aim by maximizing our opportunities from new technology and increasing our currently small web presence. Now, try to understand the objective that she is trying to achieve. The name of this question is Shivan. The objective that the CEO is trying to achieve is that uh, we need to maximize our opportunities from new technology. So what she wants to encourage is the use of the new technology. What else is there? She says that in increasing our currently small web presence. The increased web presence is also what she actually aims to achieve. The increased web presence is also what she aims to achieve. She wants a detailed evaluation of the current performance report, which is used by the board for its annual review of the business. So the appendix 1 has got the current performance report. So what she wants is she wants a review of this report. She wants a review of this specific report. That's what she actually wants. Now what next is there? The next situation is, let's try to understand. It says that she wants this task to be split into two parts. First, evaluate existing set of measures. That means you need to evaluate the performance measures and their presentation. And second, add 3 new measures which you believe address key issues for the business but are not currently on the report. Now, I actually told you that you have to follow the framework of the PALE, which is the purpose, audience, information, and the layout. But what she wants us to do is that to evaluate the existing set of measures and their presentation and then secondly add 3 new measures which you believe would address the key issues for the business but are not currently on the report. So she wants us to add 3 more things which are relevant for the business, but they're not in the report. Now what next is there? It says she has stated report does not need. She has stated she does not need a commentary as she and the finance director talk through the report in detail with the board. As she and the finance director talk through the report in detail. Okay now. So it says in additional effort to drive improvement and gain advantage, Shivan has decided to use the value chain of the business integration tool. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to ignore these areas right now because my focus is upon these two things. My focus is upon these two things. So I'm just going to go through this specific thing and see what we can do with respect to this specific report which is available. This is the report that is available to us, the appendix 1. And what we need to do is that we need to evaluate this report. We need to evaluate the measures. We need to evaluate the report. And remember, when you are going to be evaluating the report, it's not that you will be commenting on the problems with the report only. You would also be identifying the good things about the report. You'll also be identifying the good things about the report. There was one of the students who was asking that how would you be teaching us that how to draft the answer to the questions. So I told you, yes, I would be doing that, and I'll be doing that. Don't worry about it. I'll be doing that, but not today. Not today. We'll be doing it in the coming class, but not today. Now, let's talk. So if I open up this report in front of you, let's just evaluate this part of the report only. Can you just comment on the layout and things like that? Can you just do that? Okay, so layout is confusing in the first instance. Okay, okay, I'll just zoom out just to actually get a complete picture of the report. Now you're saying layout is confusing. Okay, too detailed for the board. Okay, report has been summarized, which would be useful for management. Okay, can be difficult for non-financial managers to understand. Okay, now let's just talk. Let's discuss. Good points. This is really good to see the way you people are contributing. Now, first of all, this says revenue. What does this company do? It offers clothing, right? It's a listed clothing retailer, and what they have been doing is, you see, their largest clothing retailer exceptional value. What do the shareholders want? The dividend growth. What do the entity want? It wants to create exceptional value to the shareholders. And she has identified the new CEO that we need to maximize our opportunity from the new technology, increase the web presence. Is the CEO willing to do more things? She wants to focus upon the supply chain also. She wants to focus upon the big data also. So if I look at this specific report, if I'm going to comment on this part, because I'm going to sum up the entire answer in a bit. First of all, the revenue is broken down into region A, B, C, and then total. Okay. Women, children, etc., etc. Okay. Then you've got the other data, which is men's, women, children, etc. So we have the sum of the data for 2018, and we have the sum of the data for 2017. Now, ideally, what they could have done is, there's something which is good about this specific report, which is the breakdown into regions, the breakdown into clothing and other. The bad thing about is this 2017 breakup not available, so it actually is not comparable. So it actually is not comparable. Now, the next thing is operating profit margins. You're being provided operating profit margin for 2018, 2017. So again, when you have this operating profit margin, it's actually good to have it, but it's actually too much information for the BOD. You could have rather focused upon the key segments or the key regions, rather than providing the information pertaining to each segment in detail. Okay, now what next is there? The next situation is it gives number of stores. Okay, it gives EPS 0.56. It gives dividend per share. There's an economic value added. Now, try to understand this thing. If you look at this whole report actually is focused upon what? This whole report is focused upon um, this whole report is focused upon this financial indicators only. There are no non-financial indicators available over here. There are no non-financial indicators. Furthermore, if there is somebody on the BOD who is a non-finance professional, if there is somebody on the BOD who is a non-finance professional, that person will not be able to understand. That person will not be able to understand these things. Okay, now what else is there? If I could just summarize this information: inventory turnover rate, average product lines, floor space, market share percentage, okay, number of employees, number of suppliers, rows, number of accident in stores, average queuing time for customers, VAC, average time between customer entry and employee greetings, inventory obsolescence, etc., etc. Now, let's try to understand this thing. What are the things that are mentioned in the mission? Number one, it wants to be the largest clothing retailer. The second thing is it wants to enhance shareholder wealth. Then what else is there? The CEO wants to use new technology. Then what else is there? The CEO wants that the web presence should enhance. The CEO wants that the supply chain be simplified. The CEO wants use of big data. Now, these are the major aspects which are covered by mission and which are covered by the long-term goals of this organization. So what you could simply do is that you could comment no technology measure, no web presence measure, supply chain. Okay, let's just see. You've got number of suppliers. Are there actually okay, the number of suppliers is one of the aspects of the supply chain. Actually gives you information that you need to simplify the supply chain by reducing the number of suppliers rather than dealing with many suppliers. Okay. Do we have any other thing with respect to it? It's like use of big data. Okay, now see. So if I could just sum up all of this, the major purpose of the organization, the financial growth is covered, the organizational growth in terms of number of stores, etc., is covered. But the other aspects, the other objectives, the other things, like the four things which the CEO wants, they are not covered. They have not kept the audience in mind. The audience is basically the board of directors. They have simply relied upon the financial complex data and too much information which is irrelevant for the board. The information, only the internal source, no external source information. Only the internal source, no external source. So the information that they have shared is only the internal source of information. No external source of information is there. Again, with respect to the way it's being presented, it's no comparative analysis, no graphs, no bar charts, nothing. It's simply one of those reports that's too much hodgepodge, that's having too many numbers. It's not going to be one of those which is an easy to use information. It's going to be one of those difficult to use information. The board of directors, they would not be able to have a good glance of the organization's performance and the achievement of the objectives through this. But there are obviously some good things. Well, the market share isn't there, but the revenue is there. So the revenue is an indicator of the market growth. But obviously, if there would have been an external source of information, that would have been a better thing. John Mupa, your question, which is that can we cite on the use of expert systems? So what I would say is that, well, that's a recommendation. The examiner hasn't asked for the recommendation. He has just asked for the evaluation. He has just asked for the evaluation. Yes, there are no trends, nothing. Okay, now great. Let's move a bit forward. Let's move on to the part B of this specific question. Is everyone okay? Yeah, is everyone okay with this? Okay, it says the second requirement of the question is, it says using the data in appendix 1. Using the data in appendix 1, you don't have to bring about a new data. Recommend with appropriate calculation and the justification 3 new performance measure for Shivan as requested. Now, so what she wants is, she wants this task to be split into 2 parts. First, evaluate the existing set of measure and their presentation, and then add 3 new measures which you believe address the key issues for the business but are not currently on the report. She does not need a commentary as she and the finance director talk through the report in detail with the board. She is clearly telling you that she does not need a commentary. Now, try to understand this thing. Basically, what happens is, if I talk about it, what's probably going to happen is, you'll have to keep this in mind, that there are few things that you need to tell them. So there could be measures. You have to use the information which is available. Unfortunately, the problem that we were having in the information was the lack of comparison. So you could probably introduce the comparisons into it. What are going to be the comparisons that you're going to be introducing? It's going to be like this. This is 2018, this is 2017. Probably what you could do is that you could focus upon the revenue growth. You could talk about the revenue per store. You could probably talk about the operating profit per store. Even you can have the revenue per floor space. Why? Because what happens is, we are trying to go for the web presence. So we need to know that how much are we generating on the basis of floor area. There could be multiple types of things which are not provided in the report that you could focus upon. Especially I've talked about these growth percentage or revenue per store because they're all relative measures. And it's always good to have relative measures in your report. It's always good to have relative measures in your report rather than having the absolute measures. The current measures are majority absolute measures. They're not relative measures. Any suggestions on this, please? Okay. Okay, good enough. Now, this is really okay. Yes, dividend yield could be done. Okay, we have got one of the students suggesting. I'm not gonna take name of the student. We've got one of the student who is suggesting that I should focus more on the concept delivery rather than examination questions. So I would really want to have a general feedback from you people that what exactly is your viewpoint? What should I be focusing upon more, the exam practice or the or the topics coverage? Because I did cover the topic on the first day. I know that the next 2 days have been a bit on the exam questions, but at the time of doing the exam questions, the I'm also covering the various practice areas also. I mean, like the theoretical concepts also. Just like we discuss the, just like we discuss the Hopwood's style and all that, and even we discussed about the performance management report and so on. So okay. So those who actually want me to focus on the on the topics, don't worry. I can share some lectures with you, and everyone else is actually having more focus upon the questions. So I will have a mixture approach where I would spend around 75% time on the questions, 25% time on the explanations and all that. Don't worry, I'll do the drafting. Don't worry, I'll do the drafting. I'll do the drafting. Don't worry at all. Okay, Mazari, don't worry about it. We'll move on to the other areas. But if you are good at CSF, if you are good at KPIs, so you will be okay. Let's move forward. Now, there are other aspects of this question which we need to cover up. And the other aspects of the question are, it says, advise on appropriate performance measures and systems for Shivan when using the value chain approach to simplify the supply chain. Now, see, try to understand the question. It says advise on appropriate performance measures. Again, the examiner wants you to suggest the performance measures and systems for Shivan when using value chain approach to simplify the supply chain. So they're saying that if you wish to simplify the supply chain, suggest to us the different performance measure that we should use when using the value chain approach. Now, what is the relevant thing over here? Let's just see. It says in an additional effort to drive improvement. What does it say? It says in an additional effort to drive improvement and gain competitive edge for the Shivan. The board has decided to use the value chain as a business integration tool. We'll go through the value chain a bit later. it says that the CEO has provided a copy of the value chain diagram which was discussed at the last board meeting. She believes that further improvement in Shivan's performance can be achieved through the simplification of the supply chain. The CEO believes that this has implications for the performance measurement and information system at Shivan and wants your report to address this as well. Now, so advise on appropriate performance measures and systems for Shivan using the value chain approach to simplify the supply chain. Now try to understand this thing. If I could just have a quick discussion about this value chain diagram, what the examiner has done for us is he has made things easier for us by introducing this diagram. So how does this value chain operates? What does it says? It says that there are primary activities and there are secondary activities. This is a value chain diagram. It says these are the primary activities and these are the secondary activities. So let me repeat. One of them is a primary activity and the other one of them is the secondary activity. Now, the primary activities include these 5 activities, which is the inbound logistics. What are the inbound logistics? Let's talk. Inbound logistics, the operations, outbound logistics. So inbound logistics is basically the ordering of the goods, the handling in the warehouse. That's what the inbound logistics is. The operations is basically the manufacturing of the raw material into the finished goods. The outbound logistics is your distribution department. The marketing and sales is promoting the goods, selling them. The services after sales service. And what actually happens is if you keep on I mean, like if this warehouse performs well, the operations can perform well. If operations perform well and outbound performs well, so ultimately what happens is with the combined effort of marketing and the service, the margin is going to be created. The margin is going to be created. This is all the margin. And then you have got the support activity, which is the organizational infrastructure, HR department, technology, the procurement function, etc., etc., etc. Now, what we could simply do is that we could use this value chain analysis to simplify our supply chain. The supply chain would actually involve what? You've got many suppliers on board right now. And if you have got suppliers, that means your inbound logistic, your procurement department, your technology department, all of them are actually utilized while interacting with the suppliers. If you are interacting with the suppliers, you are actually getting you are actually using this inbound logistics area because the goods are being delivered and handled by warehouse. The procurement is regularly negotiating, bargaining, etc. The technological developments are being done on the regular basis just to ensure that that the data and the suppliers and the orders are being maintained properly. So what they could probably do is that in order to simplify the supply chain, they could actually reduce the number of suppliers. So the cost of managing suppliers reduces. At the same time, the risk associated also reduces. So the cost of managing supplier reduces. At the same time, the risk reduces. So if you reduce the number of suppliers, the cost of managing the suppliers would reduce. The risk associated with the suppliers would also reduce. And hence, what is actually going to happen is this would enhance your profit. This would actually enhance. This would reduce your cost. This would actually reduce the inventory obsolescence, etc., etc., etc. Now, furthermore, the examiner is asking us that could you suggest any performance measures to be introduced? So if we talk about the appropriate performance measures and systems for Shivin when using the value chain approach to simplify the supply chain, so we could probably say that we are emphasizing on reducing the number of suppliers. So we could rather introduce a measure which is number of suppliers or number of purchase orders, or we could rather focus upon number of product lines provided by each supplier. There's also something that you could actually focus upon is that the entity may go for reducing the cost of its inbound logistic by going for the JIT. So your possible measure could be the inventory levels also. Your possible measures could be the inventory levels also. Is that okay now? Is that okay to everyone now? Okay, good enough. So now let's move a bit forward and discuss further. The next aspect of this question is, it says discusses the development of big data. I'm going to seek inputs from you people that what exactly the big data is, what do you mean by big data, and so on and so forth. I'll discuss big data with you people, don't worry about it. Then the second thing is, it says that discuss the development of big data and its potential impact on Shivan's information system, including the risk and challenges it presents. So there are two requirements to this question. You need to discuss what big data is. You need to discuss what's going to be the impact on the information system of Shivan and the risk and the challenges that it presents. Now, what is the last paragraph of this question? It says, finally, the CEO has already identified one important reason for Shivan's poor performance, and that is failure to make the use of big data in relation to Shivan's web sales. She believes that the board does not understand implications of volume, velocity, and variety of this data, and if the business want to write you a guide for them. She is aware that this is new, rapidly developing area for most businesses, so she considered board should be briefed about the risk and the challenges pertaining to it. So now, I would really appreciate if you people could just give an input of what big data is. Yeah, please. Yeah, please go ahead. I need more. I need more input from you people. Okay, I've got many suggestions. This is really good. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. It's actually one of the question. One of the student is saying, big data is structured and unstructured information. Okay. Another is saying big data is the data gathered from the information system and used for advertisements. Okay. One is saying big data is voluminous information obtained from the environment. Large volume of data. When data is collected from a mass population, especially on internet, it is either structured, semi-structured, having three characteristics: volume, velocity, variety. Okay, thank you. Okay, amazing. Large collection of data reveals trends and so on and so on. Okay, great. You've talked about data analytics, etc., etc. Now let's just try to understand this. I'll quote you an example. I was attending one of the tutor training session organized by SIMA. It was back in Sri Lanka that I was attending it in back in 2013. I learned this terminology of big data over there. Now, what was the terminology of big data that I learned over there? The trainer, he was from UK, and he was telling us, anyone from UK could suggest what's the name of the largest store? I just forgot. I don't know. I just forgot just now. Can you just name the largest that supermarket that's across the UK? Tesco. Yes. Thank you. Now, okay. So he told us that Tesco, one of the branches of the Tesco, it was way back in 2013 that I'm telling you. It was like one of the branches of the Tesco, the manager, he received a call from an angry parent, and that parent was furious about Tesco marketing the pregnancy pills to that guy's 14-year-old daughter. Tesco would have marketed the pregnancy pill to that daughter, would have marketed it through SMS, etc. Now, the manager apologized to that parent, and it was like, we are really sorry about it. We would update our database and let us just check. Let us remove your daughter's number and so on and so forth, etc., etc., etc. Now, what happened later on was, this manager, he traced the details, he traced the number, and he got that number removed from database. And then what he did was he called that that girl's parent back, and he talked to that guy that, sir, we have removed your daughter's data from our database, and we are really sorry about the incident. We never meant to do that, but unfortunately, I don't know how did this actually happen. So the parent, the father on the other side, what he did was, he says that, no, you don't have to apologize. I need to apologize. Why do I need to apologize? Because I have figured out that my daughter is pregnant. I've figured out that my daughter is pregnant. Now, so now what has actually happened? What has actually happened is, this 14-year-old girl, what she would have done is, she would have gone on to the internet, she would have searched for this pregnancy pills, and when she would have searched for these pregnancy pills, then the Tesco's information system would have captured this information, and would have taken the details of this specific individual and probably would have collected that the search history and etc., and would have targeted their campaigns for these pills to this individual. Now what is it? It's actually the use of big data. It's actually the use of big data. It's actually the use of big data. When your customers, they visit you, they visit your website, your customers, when they visit the social media forums, platforms, your customers or potential customers, when they Google out things. So what actually happens is there are various software, various information gathering software, which are named as data analytics software, or which is termed as Facebook Pixel, or which is termed as XYZ, from the various things. So what they do is that they capture the information. They capture the pattern of the customer. They see that what is it that the customer is buying. They see what time is the customer actually doing the shopping. They see, is the customer attracted by the discount. They look at what is the customer's preferred product. They look at it, that how the customer is willing to pay, and etc., 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 etc. This whole information is gathered, and since this whole information is too large, therefore one of the characteristics of big data is the volume, that there is too much of the data that is available. There is too much of the data that is available, and there is variety also. There are many information, like what is the customer interested in, what is he searching, what is he buying, what is the discount that he's running after, how is he willing to pay, is he applying any promotional vouchers, is he applying any discount vouchers, etc., etc., etc. So there is a variety of information that tells you the customer's preferences and the customer's priorities and the customer's preferences and the priorities that are being captured through them. So that's actually the variety which is available in the big data. And the last thing is velocity. When we talk about the velocity means speed. The velocity means speed. What does big data do? It captures information immediately. It it captures the information immediately. It captures information immediately. And immediately large volumes of information is captured at a very fast pace. It says that the customer is browsing and that information is actually captured. Now let me share an experience with you. um um I search for an LMS online, and the next day my Facebook, my Google, my Android phone, everywhere I was being targeted by 2 or 3 LMS providers. What is that? That's actually the pattern. That's actually your internet presence. That's your internet preferences, internet suggestion that's actually being pushed to you. I follow this um, I follow the cricket quite closely. So every now and then, my Facebook, my YouTube, it keeps on suggesting me new and new videos of the highlights of the cricketing events, of the cricket analytics commentaries, and etc. What is it happening? It says that the YouTube, the Facebook, it's gathering the information, it's compiling that information, it's converting it into a meaningful picture, and then ultimately helping the advertisers target the relevant audience. That's what it is doing. So that's what the big data is. Thank you, John Mupa. It's right. That's the time increases the reliability of the use of the information. So now this is what the big data is. This is what you have to inform them, that this is how you gather, you collect your information from the various sources, websites, social media platforms, search engines, analytics softwares, and so on and so forth. And then what happens is you interpret them and you use them to make your own sales. Now, what are the risks involved? What are the challenges? The risk involved is customer information is secured information. You may end up breaching the breaching the data integrity rules and regulations. There can be a legal claims against you for misusing the data. There could actually be that the cost of analyzing the data is basically high. The challenges is wrong prediction. The challenges are misinterpretation of data. So there could be the multiple type of things that could possibly happen with respect to this use of big data. Is that okay to everyone? Yeah, is that okay to everyone? Okay. So what we have done now is we have gone through this is specific cyber security issues also, that maybe the customer information is not kept confidential. You may end up losing the customer information, and the loss of that information may actually lead you towards paying that can have a financial implication, that you may end up paying penalties, and you may end up paying I mean damages claims and all that. This could happen. So what we have done is we have actually completed this question, the name of which was Shiv in a store, which covered three important areas. One was the use of the value chain, the other one was the use of the big data, and the third one was a very important and a very recurring, very repeatedly examined topic, which was the evaluation of the performance management report. So um, we're done with this question, and I think we have had now sufficient practice with respect to this critical success factors, mission, performance measurement. We would now move forward to the other areas of the syllabus, with the first being the economic value added computations, and the question that I'm going to be pursuing in tomorrow's class. And I would also be going through the divisionalization and the transfer pricing issues, because once we would have gone through the economic value added, we can go through the divisionalization area also. And we could talk about the divisionalization related questions. Then we could talk about the transfer pricing. So that's what our agenda is going to be for tomorrow. And for tomorrow, I'll just discuss with the ACCA team. So probably I can have your budget is going to be day after tomorrow. I could probably have an extended session, because we are having two namaz breaks in between. So it's actually reducing the available time. So I would try to actually discuss and see that if I can get an extension of half an hour for every day, so that we can have more coverage. Maz, I'll just evaluate if the corporate failure is going to be relevant. Don't worry, Mohammed Kayyum, don't worry. John Muba, yes, thank you for your comments. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining in the session. We're going to continue continue with the start with the EVA tomorrow, and till then, I would really appreciate that if you people could at least keep a track of whatever that we have discussed up till now. The video for yesterday was being uploaded on the ACCA Pakistan website on Vimeo, and the video for today's session would also be uploaded, so that you could access it. Um, Thank you very much, Asad, for your feedback. Thank you very much. Maz, I need to take the prayer break. I'm going to extend the sessions from tomorrow. Don't worry, because if you are going to take the prayer break, I can either teach or take the prayer break. So it would be like I would not be able to gain the momentum with the EVA. That's why I'm cutting short today's session. It's only for today. Yes, Ramesh, don't worry about it.